Hello, nerds, nerds for humanity. Here we are, the day after. Uh, Jeremy has been a longtime viewer of the show, and you've been on before as well. Well, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, man. Yeah, hello, nerds, and thanks for having me back.
Well, so let's go into a little bit of the post-mortem here, or the retrospective. What were your thoughts going into election day, like in terms of what you thought was going to happen, and then what's your read on where we like why Trump won?
Yeah, I did not think that Trump was gonna sweep all seven.
Mm,
I went in cautiously pessimistic, right? Like I really thought that Harris was gonna win, or at least I set the bar as like it's not gonna work out. So worst set the expectations low. But man, I thought for sure that Harris was going to take like at least either Pennsylvania or Georgia, and man, just absolutely incredible, just dominant win for Donald Trump. And then one thing I definitely did not have in my bingo card was Trump winning the popular. Like that is, I mean, did anybody expect that? Seriously?
I think so. In fact, I offered to bet my brother in the bottom left corner, MAGA Peter, that
Hey, what's up, Peter?
My fellow MAGA people. Who here is
Harris,
anyone MAGA here?
I would call myself Maha. I'm rocking the Kennedy shirt today. I'm not sure if I'm MAGA, but I'm definitely in the coalition.
You voted Trump?
Yes, sir.
All right.
yeah, Peter, you don't need to interrogate everybody about who they voted for. This is I know you're very happy today. We get you.
I'm super happy. Like,
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. We'll get to you in a second.
is it
Just.
only people going to be on the chat, or are there going to be other people?
I don't know. I made an open invitation to some other channel members, but I think I think Jeremy, Phil, and you are the confirmed people.
All right.
All right. So we'll get to you in a second, Peter. So in summary, I love muting my older brother. It's such very classy. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, the keeping in character. So Jeremy, you were hoping for Trump, and it sounds like you were surprised at what a big win it was. Why do you
Yeah.
think it was such a big outcome?
Oh man, I think there was just so much. How do you say it? Just cope, and I think I think a lot of the polling, a lot of the the pollsters had their thumb on the scale of the outcome. Um, I think that like man, just like someone besides Atlas should have had Trump sweeping all seven, and like yet they were the only ones that had it that way. I mean, Wall Street Journal, or who was it? New York Times, Siena had Harris taken like 3 or 4 states. Like, man, the polls were just so embarrassingly off, and I just figured that somebody knew what they were doing, and it's evidently not the case at all.
Yeah. All right. We'll go to MAGA Peter and then Phil. I'm going to need Phil to go after MAGA Peter because I'm sure there's going to be a load of crap dumped from his garbage truck onto us. But MAGA Peter.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, very happy with the results. I think a couple of things is it's not just showing that Trump has the unity. Like we gain in every single segment except one segment. You know, so we gained across every single segment. So we are actually building the multicultural coalition, blue collar workers, rural people, blacks, Latinos, Asians, every single sector we gained, even
Yeah.
in the cities. And what I saw that we have a mandate now to deport millions of people. I'm so excited about this. So excited.
Okay. So wait, hold on a second. Just to be clear, when you claim to be the party of diversity, you made gains in those areas, but you didn't get majorities in minority communities. Like you went from a small slither to like more than a small slither.
Well, that's all we needed. But what I commented you in our chat, I realized this today. And again, I'm coming out from a binge partying for 24 hours, partly to celebrate and partly because I was with two beautiful 20-something-year-old girls. But your Democratic Party, Tom, I feel that you guys have bandied these too much woke stuff, transgenderism, open borders, and the general public has basically said, look, we don't want all that. We don't want open borders. We don't want amnesty. We don't want to pay for illegals free housing. We definitely don't want pay for transgenderism with the illegals, and we don't want transgenders playing in the same sports league. You guys should jettison all of that stuff out of there, and then you'd be the normal Democratic Party.
All right. Thank you, Pete. We'll come back to you in a second. Phil, tell us, what are your thoughts? And feel free to respond to anything that my lovely brother from Florida has said.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough result for sure. I think it's too bad. I think a lot of people, I think some people on this panel included, expected a better night for Harris than it got. I don't think anyone really expected this bad a night for Harris or this good night for Trump from your perspective. I think in particular, my kind of assessment, I think there's a lot of like people online who are kind of saying, well, if Harris just done this like one thing differently, if she chose this different VP, if she chose like, if she instead of doing this policy, right? Well, then, different result. And I think it's always like kind of obvious after the fact, like everyone will be, okay, I understand perfectly how this election went down. But I do think it is important to note that almost every incumbent government around the world has been struggling. That includes France, England, India, Argentina, lots of countries that when faced with a post-COVID world that had lots of inflation, just couldn't recover and got knocked out of power. And I don't think this is like a super complicated like election more than just simply, I think people felt like they wanted to go back to 2019 instead of living in 2024 and felt like Trump could get them there. And that it basically blamed Biden and Harris for all the problems of the last kind of 4-5 years or so, and didn't really hold Trump accountable for any of the problems of 2020. And I think that it's too bad that issues like democracy and the fact that Trump has tons of indictments for crimes that he did commit were not enough to really swing people enough to say that they were going to take an affirmative stand against, a convicted felon, someone who tried to overthrow our democracy. And, people get to vote how they want and get to prioritize what they want. And from my perspective, I do think that I prioritize different things, and I stand by those, and I stand by the work I did because I think that Trump is unfit for the office. But I hope that I'm first off glad that Kamala Harris today conceded the election and said we need a peaceful transfer of power, said that Trump won and that that's how our system works. I think that's something that Trump could have never done. I think we know that if Kamala had won last night in the same fashion as Trump won today, that he would not have conceded the election. That he would have said the election was stolen, the election was rigged, and who knows what would have happened then. So that didn't happen. Trump won. This was a fair election, just like 2020 was, just like 2016 was. And I just hope that Trump decides to prove a lot of us wrong. And instead of kind of pursuing this super divisive agenda he's done for the last 8 years of his political career, he says, okay, a lot of things I said was just rhetoric on the campaign trail. I'm not going to do this insane plan for mass deportation. I'm not going to do these insane tariffs that will crash the economy. And I'm not going to stack the government with complete loyalists who have no competence. And so I hope that stuff was rhetoric, and like a lot of things Trump said, turns out not to be true. But I will say I'm very nervous about what the next 4 years will bring, especially because it looks like Democrats will probably not flip back the House. It's looking like maybe 223, 222, splitting 221 to like 214, 213. Like it's going to be a small majority for the Republicans probably. We'll still see what votes come out. So I don't know. I think this is a tough result for people who really like care a lot about, abortion rights, democracy, LGBTQ rights, and also just I think having competent people in government who are there for their competence and not just for loyalty to one man. So I think that's too bad. And I think it is what it is. It was a fair election, and I think everyone should accept the results, just like I wish people had done in 2020. And that's that. All
right, I will share my thoughts, and then I have a bunch of questions that we can go through, and then kind of get everybody's each of the other of our panelists' opinions. So first off, my thoughts. Wow, I've been running on adrenaline for the last 90 days, and as many folks know, I've been very active volunteering on the data teams for Pennsylvania and Georgia, and then canvassing Nevada, producing tons of content, yada, yada. I knew that it was going to be very close. No, sorry, I shouldn't say I knew. I thought it was going to be very close. But I knew Peter's point that a lot of people were turned off by the woke stuff, the transgender stuff, the border security, that was going to be, and of course the inflation, which we all knew was an issue. But I guess I thought that people's concerns about Trump the man, his character, what his attempts to overturn the last election would just be a disqualifying event. And I also thought, I was kind of glad in the last week that he was campaigning like a wild person and was not at all, trying to pivot to the center. And I was like, oh, this is great. All the Haley women are going to come our way, and that'll be that. And we have the reproductive rights stuff. So like, women are going to win this election for Harris. But obviously, like, that did not happen. And I think the most shocking thing was I was prepared for a Trump win announced a few days from now because it would have gone down to the wire. I did not expect to find out before I went to bed that I was like, I literally had a printout of the 2020 map. So we knew all the states that Biden had won. It's like, well, we just do the same thing that Biden did, we'll be fine. You're like, oh, okay, we're not going to have Georgia. That's fine. We had some buffer. Oh, we're not going to flip North Carolina. We still have a little buffer left. And then when Pennsylvania wasn't coming our way or not too close, and then, Arizona, I was just like, oh, shit, this is just Michigan, the wall just crumbled in front of us. And I was watching with a bunch of neighbors in Northern California. It's not a very red part of the country. And we went from great excitement to not great excitement. And so that was my reaction. And I'm still, I'm exhausted, and I feel like this is a bad dream. But let me go to my first question. My second question, now that we've gone the intros. We'll start with MAGA Peter, and then we'll go Philip and Jeremy. Kind of change up the order each time. Peter, you actually alluded to this around what Kamala could have done differently. But let me ask you, like, could you see as a Trump voter, could you see a scenario where Kamala campaigned differently in the last 90 days that would have resulted in her winning? Or do you think like the cake was baked before she even was picked?
I think you had a flawed candidate that really doesn't know how to discuss, answer questions properly. And maybe she was avoiding answering the questions properly because she didn't want to offend, this part of her, followers or that part. And honestly, other than abortion rights and joy and peace, if you ask most voters, nobody knows what her policies were.
So do you think if she had been more specific and proactive about her policies, that would have changed it?
I don't know. I mean, she should have just owned up and maybe threw Biden under the bus.
Okay. Phil, what do you think?
It wouldn't change anything for me.
No, I understand, but just as a political observer, if you were on the other team, what advice would you have given to Kamala 90 days ago? Well, Pete, you froze at a most inopportune time. I know Trump was trying to do. Is this like a thing when Trump was trying to fix his microphone? Are you emulating him? We'll go to Phil while Peter hopefully gets some more internet. Phil, do you think there was anything that Kamala could have done differently?
It's an interesting question. I think that there was that moment on The View, right, where she was asked, like, what would you do anything differently than Biden, right? And she gave a bad answer to that. And I think people jumped on that as like, oh, this is like she's not separating herself enough from Biden. My opinion is that basically, like, a lot of decisions you can like quarterback after the fact. Should she have chosen like Shapiro instead of Waltz? Should she have, done more populist stuff? Should she have talked more policy? Should she have, tried to go after Trump and say more about he's a convicted felon? Like, to me, it just seems like if we were losing this by like this group, like a specific group, like shifted and like it was just this one group, and if we'd had that, it would have been different. I feel like that's more like, oh, maybe this policy change could have been effective. But I really think this was a big victory for Trump, pretty much across the board. And I think it follows a pattern of pretty much every incumbent government right now that went through this inflation period. And I just think fundamentally this was not a vote, it seems like from my perspective, that was like anti-Kamala, that was like, we really hate Kamala, that's why we're voting for Trump. It felt like this was a vote of we want Trump back. And so I guess I don't really buy into the idea that like if she just had given a different answer on The View, had distanced herself more from Biden, or chose a different VP, like all these like what ifs, if she hadn't campaigned with Liz Cheney, like all these different stuff that like is like 100 different decisions in a campaign you're going to make, and some will help you, some will hurt you. Who knows which one, how they all evened out. I just don't really believe that was like what cost her it. I think it's interesting to me also that this election, it feels like it was a lot of vibes and not a lot. It's interesting that your brother talked about Harris not being able to talk coherently about policy, when I've yet to find more than like a 15-second clip of Trump ever talking coherently about any policy ever. I still remember his childcare answer where I think he never got close to a coherent thought. But this wasn't about a policy. This wasn't a policy election. This was an election on, I don't like how things are right now. I think inflation is too high. I don't like the border the way it is. And I liked how things were in 2019. So I want to vote for whoever was in charge then and against whoever's in charge now. Like, I don't think it's more complicated than that. And I think that message transcended a lot of different groups in a way that I think wasn't super expected. But I mean, I think there'll be a lot of stuff written in the next few days, weeks, when we get more exit polling about like, and of course, like as with like most campaigns, whenever people lose, there's always a lot of finger pointing, it's this person's fault, it's this person's fault. I just think it was something a little more fundamental than that. And I think, that's what happened. I don't think it was a ton more complicated than that personally.
Thanks, Phil. Jeremy, what do you think? Do you think, what would your advice have been? Well, actually, if you could go back in time and let's say you were a paid advisor and you wanted Kamala to win, what advice would you give her to help her kind of change her approach?
I think she should have just gone. If there was going to be a winning outcome for Kamala, like I think there was no way. I don't want to say no way. I think the odds were very slim that she could possibly win on immigration or the economy. This I think Phil was right. This was a change election. She's viewed as the incumbent, and so you really had to differentiate yourself. And I think she should have just gone all in, anti-Gaza, and probably try to differentiate yourself from Biden and say, we're not going to fund the genocide in Gaza. we're not going to fund this massacre in Ukraine, and we're going to just throw out these neocon policies, and yet really just drill that message home. And then I think I think she definitely would have done better. Instead of parading around the country with Liz, Frank, and Cheney. I mean, you guys all remember. Hopefully, you remember. Like, Dick Cheney used to be like the embodiment of like a super villain in this country. Like, if you were going to be on the left, like at all, you had to say that Dick Cheney was a war criminal. Now that like for the Democratic Party to wrap their arms around the Cheneys, it's just like, what is happening? Like, what are you as a party? You're the you're the party of war now. It really breaks my heart. As someone who was like radicalized by the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, to see the complete 180 from the Democratic Party on this topic in particular is just crazy to me. That's how you turn a person like me, who was a never Trumper in 2016, a never Trumper in 2020, into an only Trumper in 2024.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm guessing they thought there was a pocket of McCain, Romney, Haley Republicans that would break for Harris if folks like Liz came out and supported her. But, obviously my advice to Harris would have been, don't do it, because this needs to be a change election and you're too much part of the current administration. And I understand that your job as a VP is to just be ready, but they're going to associate you with everything that people are pissed about. You're not going to be able to distance yourself. And if you throw Biden under the bus, you're going to look disloyal. But if you say everything's fine, you're going to look, tone deaf. We need to get someone else. Now, if she's like, oh no, I'm going to do it anyway, then I think I would have to say you have to go 1,000% on what you're going to do about inflation and the border, and you got to out Trump on cost of living and out Trump him on border security. And the left part of the party is going to stick with you because they hate Trump so much, and you're going to have to kind of have a Sister Soldier month. All right, Jeremy, you want to make a point, and then Phil.
Yes, real quickly too. I think that the Democratic Party really messed up when they rigged the party for Kamala too. Like, nobody had any buy-in for Kamala Harris. Like, had she gone through the primary process and people really like went to bat for her, and then she came out victorious on the other side, it would have made a huge difference for people. And then also for the Democratic Party to turn their back on RFK, like I think if they would have reached out and got the RFK endorsement, which he was open to, that could have helped move the needle as well.
All right, Phil, you had a follow-up.
I think it's just important to acknowledge, like, she had to run away. Phil suggested she ran away from Biden. Like, I think it's important to acknowledge the economy right now is objectively outperforming every other country. We have 2.4% inflation, I believe, so it's right around the target. We have a really good unemployment rate right now that's pretty strong. The stock market's hitting record highs. Like, I understand there's an idea that she had to run away from Biden, but I think it's also important to acknowledge, like, with this economy the way it is, she shouldn't have had to run away on that. And I think that we'll see in probably about a couple of weeks, Trump will come out and say that the economy, maybe as soon as he takes office, the economy is completely back. It's the best economy we've ever had. It's incredible. Inflation's down. Unemployment is incredible. And it's because I'm back in office. And I think we'll see probably in about, 2 months, the how do you rate the economy for Republicans? It's going to go from like 2% saying it's good to like 90% in about a blink of the eye. And that's disappointing. I think it's sad in a lot of ways that there's a lot of really good policy done, I think, around manufacturing jobs, around protecting unions. Biden and Harris helped save the Teamsters pensions. No Republican voted for that. Teamsters sat the selection out. There was a huge effort to bring manufacturing jobs back, and they were far more successful at that than Trump. But a lot of communities ended up voting for Trump in the end. And I think there's a good conversation to be had about how much these elections are turning on actual policy and actual results, and how much is turning on people relating more to cultural issues, whatever that may be, or whether, as Jeremy brought up, foreign policy issues, whatever it might be. But I guess I do want to like state for like the record, I think that we're not in a terrible economy. And I think that it's important to know the difference between what the vibes are and feelings are of people and what the actual like facts are. And I think that it's too bad that there was, I think, a big disconnect. And I think that disconnect caused tariffs. And I mean, it's your responsibility always to make sure that people feel like they're being listened to and feel like they're being heard and feel like you have a proactive plan to help them. And if they're unhappy with something, that you're going to fix it. And if they did too poor a job at that, like that's on them. But I do think it's important to recognize like we are not in like a recession or Great Depression as Trump talks about. We're in a pretty good economy right now, and Biden and Harris have a lot to do with why we've recovered so quickly from COVID. And although we had high inflation at the start, why we've gotten inflation to a good place, which Trump, I'm sure, will take full credit for as soon as he takes office.
Yeah, well, we're going to get a master class on how to sell this current economy in about probably a few days. I've already been hearing on, from some of my other MAGA friends, they're telling me like, hey, look at the stock market. And I was like, you guys were telling me just last week that nobody has money in the stock market. Why are we bragging about the stock market now? So it's amazing how you can take the same economic indicators and it's going to be spun in a very different way. But I agree with you, Phil. Like the economy, most economists would say this is a very strong economy, but I think voters were pissed off about $7 lattes at Starbucks or, whatever, $7, eggs and shit like that. I mean, that's something that was a reminder every day.
Right. But eggs aren't $7. I think JD Vance posted a picture where he was like, eggs are $7. And then in the background, it was like, there was an eggs for $3.
Yeah, that's what you're taking that way out of context. If you look at everything that was on that shelf, I mean, that's another example of how they just lied and smeared
right?
about.
There was an egg in the background that was $3, right?
Right, sure there was.
Right, okay,
however, you're going to say that he lied and said there was no eggs on that shelf that were that price range, that there absolutely were.
No,
but
I'm saying that you can buy organic, ultra pasteurized, omega added eggs if you want for $7. But
all right, but no, real quick on the economy
all around. I mean, that's my point. It's like it's not about it's about making people feel a certain way, and they do that very effectively.
Right. So I mean, what you're saying,
and that people did not feel like it come down enough, and that's how people feel. But I think that's different than the objective reality of what do eggs actually cost if you actually want to buy like normal eggs. And I think I think we can have a debate around like was that feeling legitimate or not. But I'm saying like they're $7 eggs and representing that as that's what eggs cost for everybody is misleading, and they were trying to mislead.
I think I think that's such a silly hill to die on, man. All right, so there are only two demographics in the country that think the economy is doing well right now. One, people making over $100,000 a year. Number two, people with a degree. So that you take out that is such a small sliver of the population that like you completely lost the plot. When like
I'm not disagreeing with you that people feel that way. I never said that people don't feel that way. We're talking about
but they're right. They're right, Philip. You're going to tell me that 70% of the population is wrong, and like you're looking at completely the wrong indicators. Like these economists,
shouldn't we look
these
at
people in institutions?
The inflation rate.
But the way that they make the consumer basket is completely flawed too. Like, so right now, if you're gonna buy a home, buy a car, have a child, those three things are nearly impossible for a big chunk of the country right now. If you have a society where you can't own a home and you can't have a kid, what kind of society do you freaking have? And that is, I mean, if I could really drive that point home of like why Trump won. It's like, what's the point of the American project at all if you can't own your own house and you can't have a kid?
But I think this is one of my points, though, is that Trump didn't have plans for any of that stuff. Kamala did, and it didn't matter. And listen, we talked about housing policy if we want. Kamala had a very clear plan about how to first give first-time home buyers tax credits to be able to buy homes and also build a lot more housing. Trump specifically said he didn't want to build more housing because he thought it would drive prices lower. Like, we talk about child tax credit, which Kamala was very strong in favor of. Every Republican voted against it in 2021.
Her policy was
my point is that, like, like it is not a policy election. It is I feel like 2019 was better than 2024, and Trump was president then. Kamala and Biden are in power now. I don't like how things are right now, so I'm going to vote for Trump. I don't think it's like this, like people who were comparing very closely the exact policy positions of both sides. I think it was more of they trusted Trump to get them back there. They didn't trust Kamala to get them through the inflation. And like, I don't think we need to pretend that like inflation is now like at an insane level right now, and that it hasn't come down significantly, or that unemployment is in bad shape. People don't have any jobs, like things that Trump was saying, like it's just not true. Like, and it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of room for improvement. And it's not saying that no one's struggling in America, but I think it's fair to acknowledge the difference between how people perceive the economy and how it's actually going.
All right, let's we got other topics to hit. I want to get MAGA Peter back in here. So my next question, Peter, let me unmute you. Hold on. Okay, you should be unmutable now.
Why you keep muting me? And they're not muted.
All right, I will not
let Peter speak.
Let Peter speak. All right, I will not mute you anymore. I wasn't sure you were moving around in your yacht. You know, you're working your working man lifestyle.
Just so you, I am in my yacht, and then I'm trying to charge my phone wirelessly, and the phone overheated. That's why I had to shut off. It shut off by itself.
Got you. Here's my question for you, Peter. What do you want, and what do you think Trump will do in his first 100 days?
Okay, it's a very good question, Tom. Look, basically everything that he's been saying, and he takes this to heart, and the American public fully knew what his agenda is, he will be doing this. So I fully expect and hope that he's going to have massive firings in the federal government, especially in the DOJ and the FBI, and install loyalists that will not commit illegal lawfare. So basically, I think that he has learned in the last 8 years, and I thank God in a way that we lost the 2020 election, or shall we say, we didn't lose it. You know, obviously that you guys cheated, and then we lost it, because now it gives Trump a much better way to reset. I think he's going to be a much better president in 2025 than he would have had if he had to run the second term in 2021. So I expect massive immigration changes at the border. That's why I voted for him. And that's why the American public voted for him too. We don't want these illegals running around in America. We want massive layoffs in the federal government. Massive.
Okay. All right. So what I'm hearing is massive deportations, massive firing of civil servants, people who typically work across multiple administrations, and they will be replaced by, the word you used was loyalists, loyal to the Constitution, loyal to who? To what?
Loyal to Trump and the Constitution. Because the previous time he had all these traitors in his cabinet.
Like John Kelly?
I don't want to mention any names, but he had a lot of traitors. And now he's gonna handpick and hand select people that are not gonna try to circumvent him. So he has the mandate of the American people. Okay?
To do that.
He's won the popular vote.
He did say he was gonna do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess he could argue people knew what they were going to get. I mean, all right, let's jump over to Jeremy. What do you think Trump is going to do? What do you want him to do?
I think the TCJA is supposed to expire next year. So with that on the table, he'll be able to get a lot done. So
what's the TCJA?
The Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
Oh, you mean his original tax cut thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think with that, I don't think there's going to be a lot that's going to change in that framework. However, they will add on to it: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Democrats might fight for a CTC expansion, and I hope they do, and I hope they win. And I think you also might see tacked into that some expanded deportation powers. So the way that local law enforcement can work with ICE, you'll probably see more ICE agents. Um, and you might see some more like general border policy stuff in there. But I think the TCJA, the tax changes on tips, OT, Social Security, CTC, those are going to be like the real core of his first 100 days accomplishments.
I think we'll see some attack on the sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. Like we will defund them if they don't comply.
What about the sanctuary employers, Peter? Do you think he'll crack down on like the meatpacking facility owners and the agri farmers?
I don't know, Tom. That's your pet peeve.
Well,
I think he will.
Why do you only deport people and do the border, but you don't stop the employment of people who are undocumented? Like that. If you get the source of the demand and you cut that off, then you'll probably have less illegal migration.
You have to understand these people are coming to America not just for jobs. Those countries that they're living in are third world countries, and you're putting them up in 5-star hotels. Who wouldn't want to come up here? You're giving them a massive incentive.
Okay, but you don't want to do anything to the business owners who employ undocumented workers for below minimum wage. That's okay.
Take away the free hotels, free Medicare, and free food, and then you'll have less people come up.
Okay. All right, Phil. What do you think? What do you want him to do, and what do you think he will do?
I think also, first off, you pointed out a really good thing that your brother said, which was he wants loyalists in the government, not people who are committed to the Constitution first and foremost. And I mean, I think that might be what Trump does. I mean, I think there will be some checks by the Senate on who he can appoint, but probably not that many, given that it probably will be a Republican Senate looking like 53, 50 to 47, something like that, probably. So my hope is that there are enough, Republicans who still want a federal government that is competent and loyal to the Constitution first, before any one man. And hopefully they'll assert themselves with that process. I think that Jeremy's right that there probably will be some, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that'll probably be the first thing on the menu legislatively to try, and they're probably going to lower the corporate tax rate lower, keep the individual income tax, I think, cuts as well. And then I do agree that there might be a child tax credit deal. We'll see. I know that JD Vance, I think, made some nods to that. Whether they actually believe it or not, we'll see. But I do think the Democrats will try and fight for that, and there may be an interest among some Republicans to do that. I also think, though, that I'm skeptical that the no tax on tip, no tax on overtime, no taxes on Social Security, all the kind of last-minute kind of promises that he kind of made, I'm skeptical those will end up actually coming through. I think it seems a little strange as a policy matter to do a no tax on tips, like incentivizing employers to pay their employees. I don't see why we couldn't just give a tax cut to like all middle class, and working class Americans. I'm not sure why being paid in tips should give you like a special like tax benefit. I think you can do targeted tax relief that doesn't. But I think the reason why Trump said that, and I think the reason why Kamala followed along with that too, is that I think that they felt like this was a way to win support in Nevada, where there are a lot of tipped workers. And so we'll see if they come through with that. I think on immigration, there will probably be a big change too. I mean, I think it would have been good if we'd gotten the bipartisan border bill done. I mean, I will see if that comes back up. I somewhat suspect Trump's approach will be to kind of do it all on his own, all executive power, push the bounds of that pretty far. Some of the plans seem pretty darn awful when he talks about mass deportation, using National Guard troops even using National Guards from other states to go into other states to round up immigrants. I think that's pretty scary. I think it's not going to be good at all. I hope that won't actually come to pass. We'll see. And then on environmental regulations, I'm sure Trump will do a very aggressive tearing up of those. I think it's quite possible that there will be more Supreme Court vacancies over the next 4 years. I'm sure Trump will fill them with far right, anti-abortion judges, and that will be the court that will live under for a long time, and that's too bad as well. So I think, I think in the short term, it's going to be tax cuts and probably some like very aggressive and I think really problematic immigration and environmental actions that will not be good. And then the long term will be a lot of appointments of judges who will serve out life terms for a long time that I think are also not going to be good for women's reproductive rights.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. My take on this is here's what I want. I would like him to do, knowing who he is and what he campaigned on. I actually think there's a way that he can pursue and deliver on his promises of more border security and less, taxes in a way that's almost bipartisan, because he's taken out such an extreme position as a campaigner that it won't take him much to moderate it a little bit and get it done. And okay, fine, yeah, let's do something like maybe border security, the bipartisan border deal plus, without necessarily doing like massive, trucks driving around with National Guard rounding people up. Like there's a middle ground there. And tax reform, like, okay, I personally think that it's not fiscally responsible to cut taxes that much, but if he wants to do it, like, that's fine. I would appreciate it personally. It's fine. But I don't think that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to go all in, like hyperdrive on this stuff, because he's going to be like, no, I campaigned on this. I won. I won the popular vote. I won the Senate. I won the House. This was not a bait and switch. You knew what you were going to get. And welcome to, dictator for a day, Trump, right? I mean, he literally told us he was going to do this. Now, I do think there's a positive case for the non-Trump people out there, which is it's a little bit extreme, but if we let him drive the car off the road and it crashes, then I think it'll be like maybe we break the fever. And then people are like, oh, wow, like we need to go back to a normal, kind of leadership model. Obviously, that's kind of dangerous because we're all in this car with him. But I don't know that I see him self-moderating. So that's my take. Phil, you raised, you indicated you had a follow-up.
Yeah, I think that Americans seem to really not like dramatic change. I think in general, like they say they want it, then when it happens, immediate backlash. So, I think it's possible that Trump does a huge overreach and then gets smacked back with a bad midterms, and that's possible. I think particularly his tariff plan, has the potential to just be an enormous inflation bomb. And that would be, I think, one of the worst policies he's talked about if it went into effect. For the thing he ran on, which is stopping inflation, would be a huge. So I think you're right that it's possible Trump does such a bad job that it ends up with Democrats getting more seats down the road. But I think at the end of the day, it's not worth it. And I hope that he just decides to take a step back from some of the worst ideas he's had and just try and be a better president than I expect him to be. That's my hope.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy. Follow-up point from you.
Yeah. One thing I think
can
is
I say something, Tom?
Yeah, right after Jeremy.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah, I think even before January 20th, when he's inaugurated, I think Trump is actually going to make some major inroads in the situations with Israel and Ukraine as well.
Ooh.
I'm not sure if they're going to be. I don't know if they'll be completely solved, but I think Trump's going to do it. I think he can. I think he's probably one of the only people that are uniquely equipped to handle those situations.
You're not legally allowed to, just so you know. You're not allowed to, in that transition when you're still not the president, make deals with foreign leaders. Like that's I think it's called the Logan Act.
It's like this is the kind of shit that just like nobody gives a fuck about, dude. Like it might be right, you might be true, and you might try to impeach him over it, but like that's just only going to make people support him even more, dude. Like
this is, I think, a good illustration of the attitude of there's a law in place to try and make sure the presidents have the ability to negotiate on behalf of the country for their entire term and try and resolve. And then on January 20th, Trump becomes the president. He'll have his team transitioned in and he'll make these decisions. But instead, the attitude is, well, screw the law. We don't care because we like Trump. And that's a really bad attitude, especially because I think Trump, when
But
he's president, people should follow
like
the
tens
law.
of thousands
And
of people's lives are on the line. You think it's okay for tens of thousands of people to just go ahead and die because of the brain dead Biden administration's policy to continue?
so like,
Like,
where did I say that at all? Like, that's not even close to what I said. There's a law in place
no,
to
you're
allow
talking.
the president to be the president for the full term. Then after a president's sworn in, they are the power of the presidency, and they can negotiate with foreign leaders on behalf of the United States. That's how it works. I mean, like, I think the idea that Trump should step in front of Biden for these last 2 months when he's not the president and has no authority for the next 2 months, like, that's just not how our system works. I mean, like, I understand you have a lot of faith in Trump that he can like magically solve these problems, but I just think if you care about actually like our systems of government and how we give the power to the president for the full term, and then we give the power to the next president for the next full term, I think you should respect that. In the same way that I think Trump, at the end of for his 4 years, he's the president. He deserves to have, the powers that the president has. And I don't think it's right for, some candidate running against Trump in 2020, running against JD Vance in 2028, to go out and then talk to foreign leaders and present themselves to the next president when they're not the president yet. We have rules in place to try and actually like create an orderly system where the president can actually be the president. So I think we should respect the laws that are in place. And I think that's a radical statement to say that.
All right.
I think that absolutely is a radical statement. You're talking about like, is that the fucking Logan Act, like, or the Hatch Act? Like, I don't know. If we're going by the straight up law, then we shouldn't be provided any arms to Israel whatsoever because they're blocking aids that we're sending to the people that they're bombing every day. So there's that too, man. Like you can't say the law works one way and not the other. Well, I mean, obviously you guys do say that the law works one way and not the other. But
you literally said you don't care that it breaks the law because if Trump does, like, I mean, listen, your guy won and he's going to be the president. I think this is part of why people don't care as much about the Trump broke the law because he convicted felon. They care more about other stuff, and that's their choice to care about it. But I think presidents should actually obey the law, and I think that's not a insane statement. And I think your idea that because Trump steps in and talks to like Zelensky and says for him to give up 2 months sooner, like the idea that he's radically going to just solve the problem immediately, I think is kind of ridiculous. I mean, these aren't easy problems to solve, and I think it's kind of ridiculous to say that Trump's just this magical figure who just fix everything immediately. And
all right,
I think we can break the law to try and fix it.
Peter's been waiting to get in. Peter, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So listen, couple of things on the immigration front. I think what he's going to do is when new people come to the border, they're going to be immediately repelled back. That's number one. And then he's going to go after the criminals and murderers that are here and deport them first. It's not going to be like deporting random for millions of non-gang members. And then in regards to the federal government, look at how Elon Musk trimmed down the Twitter staff like literally overnight. So I think Elon's probably going to play a role in efficiency. We all know the federal government is bloated. Yeah, so that's
Do you
pretty
think
much
Elon will look into like the Pentagon
and
budget?
installing loyalists.
No.
I think
Peter?
the whole budget, every budget, yeah.
I have a feeling he's going to go after like Department of Education, like these small line items on the federal budget. He's not going to like. I would respect Elon if he's like, oh, we're going to have to go after and look at the efficiency of our healthcare system. We have to look at the efficiency of our retirement system. We have to look at the efficiency of our defense budget, because that's where the deficit's coming from. It's not from, special education subsidies. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
Agree. We'll see. I mean, if they take the axe to the Department of Education and then see how that works, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that. And then taking the axe to other departments.
I think that we can look it up, but I don't think the Department of Education is a big percentage of our annual budget.
I don't think it is either. And how long has the Department of Education even been around?
It's not a huge thing. I know people love to talk about it because I think it's symbolic.
Yeah,
but
it's a virtue
if you
signal.
look at the dollars, If you really want to save money,
I know, Tom. It's not a big amount. It's not a big amount, but would you want the massive cuts on Department of Defense first, or you want to try it out for 2025 in Department of Education, and then year 2, 2026, try it out, or you want to take the hatchet to the Department of Defense right away?
I mean, if your point is we have a unsustainable deficit and debt, then you would want to cut the areas where you have the most waste. And that would be the largest line items, not the smallest line items. Right?
I mean,
like if you were going to go into a business and say, hey, we need to streamline this business, we wouldn't say like, oh, well, let's start by cutting the landscaping budget. We would say like, well, where are we spending the money? Let's cut there.
I mean, I think there are two big possibilities, I think, with Trump. One is that he says, listen, I've won my election. I don't have to run for any more elections. Let me do an enormous slashing of the budget for, food stamps, for Medicaid, for Medicare, for all these Social Security, all this stuff that like Republicans have dreamed about for a long time to cut. And the other possibility is he says, listen, I love to spend. He spent an enormous amount his first 4 years, even before COVID, and says, okay, let's keep spending. Does enormous tax cuts across the board, does enormous stuff he doesn't pay for, doesn't really cut much spending beyond a symbolic Department of Education, EPA cuts, and then we end up with a much bigger deficit. I feel like those are the two big possibilities to me of what he's going to end up doing.
Yeah, and Peter, just so you know, the Department of Education, I'll look it up, but I don't think it's a big part of the budget. But regardless, your view is, so you've got 3 things now. Mass deportation, mass firing of what your folks call the deep state, I'm guessing, like civil servants, right? And then mass cutting of spending. Unclear where you think that cut will come, but you think that's where Elon's DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. Do you have a problem with Elon getting involved in the federal budget but also being a vendor? Peter?
You mean with SpaceX? I mean, look, he's
And
got
Starlink,
a tremendous brain.
And Tesla
And
getting all the renewable stuff?
He's very well qualified. Obviously, he's one of the most successful entrepreneurs. So, yeah, I have no problem with him doing that.
And that's the problem, is none of these talking points around like corruption or conflicts of interest actually mean anything. They're just, whenever it's the other side, it doesn't matter.
All right. I'm gonna have a final question, but we also have a last minute joiner. Let me see if I can add Ram. He's a former guest. Ram, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Did you want to share any general thoughts about the results of last night? Because we've been having a spirited conversation, but it's always good to get another point of view.
Yep, definitely. So do you still have the maps access? So can you overlay the blue-red election results?
Yeah, let me pull up the failing New York Times.
So that and the map of states which have voting laws or voter ID laws.
Okay, well, I'll do the first one, just the results.
No, both. The point I'm trying to make is, if you look at both together.
Tom, did you send me a link to these maps, or do you want me to just find them?
No, I did not. I wanted you to find them.
Okay. Well, here's the results. I'll try and see.
So remember where the blue is, right? It's all on the west coast and northeast mostly, right? Plus Illinois and a couple of other places. Now look for which states have voter ID laws. Or which states do not have voter ID laws.
Okay, so this one, I just Googled it, so I don't know if this is the map you're referring to.
This is one of them.
So these are policy.
So what are the green and light green?
Overall policy tally. Created
no, there's another map which shows basically when you do the research you'll find it.
Okay, well, why don't you just tell us what the takeaway is, Ron?
There's a significant overlap between states which do not have voter ID laws or which do not check for voter ID before allowing them to vote, and where the electoral results map shows blue.
Oh, so you're
Where-
saying the states that Harris won, you're asserting was because of more
Nope.
relaxed voting
Nope.
requirements?
I'm not. That would be causation. I'm just pointing to a correlation, saying
Okay.
that these two maps are correlated, as in there is this area where they're not checking voter ID, letting people vote, and then it shows up in blue in the electoral result map. That's all I'm pointing to.
And why are you making that correlation? Why are you pointing that out?
So remember the last time we spoke, we were talking about margins and how county margins also matter, even in, or my point was, even in states where, like California, 70% or 75% was Democrat, right? When we looked at it, even there, popular vote matters and voting your conscience matters. And when you have so many people voting without any ID, without any, you don't know how many of them are actually citizens or how many of them are actual voters. It dilutes the confidence in the system a bit.
Phil, what do you think about that? I've heard this argument. I remember, I think we lost Peter, but when he visited me from Florida, he came to California. And one of the first things he told me was like, oh, I'm going to register to vote in California and show you how easy it is to register with no paperwork. He was unsuccessful. He was very surprised that he wasn't able to register to vote in California because I think the information he gets from Telegram was that anyone can come to California and vote.
Yeah.
So let's get Phil's point of view on Ram's correlation.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally in bluer states, there's less efforts to suppress voters, and so there's less restrictive measures. In red states, there's more of that, whether arguably because they are more concerned with election security is their argument. I think more is about suppressing voters. I think that a really easy way to test this is to ask if you want voter ID, would you also support the government providing a free, sending it to every American, a free ID, photo ID right off the bat? And the truth is the Republicans don't support that because it's not really about the voter ID. It's ridiculously uncommon for people to cheat or do voter fraud. And I mean, I just think it's something where, like, I think it was the North Carolina, there's a case in the Supreme Court where they talked about how a voter ID law was specifically targeted to disenfranchise Black voters. The legislature literally researched what kind of IDs do Black voters use most, what kind of IDs do white voters use most, and then they said the IDs Black voters use the most, we're going to cut those ones out. And like, I mean, I don't think there's something intrinsically wrong about voter ID if you actually make an effort as a government to make sure everyone has a government ID. But the truth is most of these kind of restrictive voter ID laws are more about difficult to vote than actually difficult to vote fraudulently. And like another good examples are you can look at states that let people vote with gun licenses, but not with like school public university school IDs. There are a lot of kind of examples of these voter IDs laws not being about election security, make sure you are who you say you are. It's about a lot of the time trying to stop people from voting, and they put more barriers. I think that's too bad because I think like Trump won this election and he won it by a decent number of votes, and it had nothing to do with any voter fraud or voter ID or any of that. Just more people voted for Trump, and that's how elections should be. It was how 2020 was. More people voted for Biden. That's the system, and I don't think that we need a lot of effort to try and make it harder for people to vote. We should be making it secure and keeping it secure, but also there isn't a problem here. It's a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist.
Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, what is it? The 22nd Amendment that says states have their own individual rights to run elections however they want, and yeah, that's all fine and good, whatever. But I think we do need to have some more uniformity in the process. I think having a nationally provided, a U.S. ID I think is completely reasonable. Something that's provided free of charge. Hey, whatever, sure, what. I think if you actually put it in a bill on the floor, I don't think it fails. I don't think there's some kind of grand conspiracy ran by the Republican Party to suppress black vote in in swing states. But yeah, I think a voter or some kind of national ID that's easily accessible is a very positive thing. And also, I think that we should kind of also uniform or streamline the types of machines that are used, the types of ballots that are used, the way that we count the vote. I think we could make a lot of progress there and still respect the spirit of the 22nd Amendment.
Peter, what are your thoughts? So Ram, we lost you for a little bit, but Ram he was pointing out a correlation. He's not saying that it was a causation, but he was saying, oh, look, the states that have the least restrictive voter ID requirements are blue. And Harris won the states where they don't do as much voter ID requirements. And then Phil was saying, well, it's actually an inverse correlation that, well, the states that are supportive of the least suppression of votes are the ones that went for Harris. It's not about the ID requirements. I know when you visited me, this was an area you were interested in terms of registering to vote as a Californian. What's your take on, should it be easier to vote or harder to vote?
Okay, just so you know, I'm on 2% battery and this thing keeps dying and overheating. I'm charging it wirelessly. When I lived in Hong Kong and when I lived in Singapore, so Singapore as an expat, everyone is given a national ID.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's perfectly normal and usual. We should have a national ID.
I think a lot of conservatives would argue that they don't want the federal government having a registry of people, and that this is the start of Big Brother, keeping an eye on you or whatever.
I don't know. Like when you're in Singapore, even if you're an expat, you were working in Singapore. You had an employment card, right?
Yeah, but I think Singapore is okay with a very strong government. I think our country's history here is actually with the states saying, hey, look, we don't want overreach from DC. Why do we have to take because right now you feel good because Trump's in office, but imagine someone else is in office in 4 years that's very progressive. Are you going to be okay with them running a system where they have visibility into everybody and has a required ID? I'm personally okay with it, but I'm just saying you're advocating for a policy that is not historically consistent with the Republican Party.
I don't know why we don't have a national ID card, because not everyone has a passport, not everyone drives. Should have a uniform ID card. It makes no sense why we don't have one.
I mean, I think this is I think that if you could find a way to make sure that everyone has an ID who is a U.S. citizen, and I think once you have that, and if you accept those IDs to vote, I think it makes the voter ID laws much more acceptable, because everyone has the ability to get those if they're citizens very easily, and they're free and they're sent to everyone. I think also some states allow you to use utility bills, other things that are much easier and people have in their house, to prove who they are and have their address on it. I think there's ways you could make voter ID laws a lot more accessible, and they would still not allow people who are not citizens to vote like they always have, but you would actually make it so you don't have the effect of making it harder for people who are citizens to actually vote. And I think it would be good if we could try and make that process of getting an ID in these voter ID states easier to get.
Tom, sorry. When you were in Switzerland, did you have an ID card?
Yes. But again, you're talking about countries where a very organized, strong government is considered traditional. I think in the US, our history, for good reason, is a very deep suspicion of federal overreach, right? Given the thing with the king and everything, right? So So everybody,
That's a great way to put it. The thing with the king and everything.
So every state kind of wants to run their own show, and they don't like to be told what to do. Now, if you said to me, "Hey, let's have a national ID for all U.S. citizens and permanent residents and whatever status you are, you might be guest workers. Everybody should have ID with your status. It were free and easy to get, and then on election day, people eligible to vote, they all get the day off, federal holiday. Employers have to pay you. It's great. Like, I would love that. But I don't think that has been a bipartisan proposal. Historically, the Republican Party has not been for more voting.
I'm pretty sure Vivek ran on that, make it a national holiday. I don't know about the national ID, but it is becoming
franchising 25 to 18-year-olds as well. I mean, this was not a. I mean, he was the guy running on saying that 18, 26-year-olds or whatever shouldn't be able to vote unless they pass a test. So I don't think Vivek is a big supporter of democracy.
But no, I think there really is like what we're talking about here as far as like voter ID, national ID, all that stuff. I think there is a bipartisan consensus that is entirely possible to achieve in the next 4 years.
Wouldn't that be great? Maybe we get a bipartisan win. That would be fantastic. Rob, I got to give you the last words on this topic since you started us off on this.
Yeah. So again, so I'll just quickly answer some of the points that were raised. Right? Does attempts at voter suppression and such thing, does it exist? Yeah, I believe it exists. I believe like this is the country where gerrymandering happens. I mean, I'd be surprised if somebody did not look at the option of eliminating possible voters who would not vote for some team and try to figure how to make that happen. And voter ID, in fact, is going to help those people stand up and say, hey, we are eligible voters and we were not allowed to vote. On the other side of the coin too, right? Obviously, states' rights matter and all that. That structure works for many things, but if you're not going to serve someone alcohol or let someone drive without a proper ID and without the proper qualification, why are you letting them elect representatives? Why are you letting them make a much bigger decision when it's very easy to do that, right? Again, this is not a matter of it's only a small negligible percentage or not. No, this is a matter of getting confidence in the system. How can you build confidence intrinsically, systematically into the election process? One way is voter ID. And these kinds of maps, they show sufficient correlation that there will always be that little seed of doubt in some people if it's just correlation or maybe it goes beyond that, right? That was the first word that jumped out of you, right? When I mentioned it, you said, oh, are you saying that this causes that? No, that's how quickly people can misinterpret statistics. So having a system that is trustworthy is always more helpful. Oh, by the way, another point I was hoping I'd get to make today is the election is done. Whoever won, whoever lost, lost. But our issues are still the same. Whatever issues we had yesterday, we still have those issues today. We should focus on making sure our issues get dealt with. Our job is not done just because we voted. Whether we like the people who got elected or not, we should continue to engage and work towards getting stuff done.
All right. Well, why don't we wrap up the panel with this closing question, and then I'll let you all go and give some closing thoughts of my own later, and do my thank you to our channel members. But for the panel, my final question going out is, what didn't we cover in this panel that you wish we had talked about? And then the second going out question is, maybe what's a positive scenario that you see for the next 4 years, even if you don't think it's probable, but we'll end on a positive note. Jeremy, maybe you go first, and then Phil, and then Ram. Any topics that we didn't hit? And then secondly, like, what's a positive, good thing for America scenario for the next 4 years?
I think an interesting topic would have been who could have beaten Trump. I think Trump is actually a very defeatable candidate. And if they would have gone about things differently, I think they would have comfortably won. As far as a positive change, man, one thing I am most hopeful for is a reduction in the war machine and the military-industrial complex. And if there's one thing that I really truly hope that Trump is able to achieve, it is that. And yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, and by the way, after we get done with the outgoing questions, I do have a few chat questions, but I know that we're already over an hour, so if you guys have to bounce, you can. But if you want to hang around, we can hit the audience questions too. Phil, any things that we didn't hit that you wanted to talk about, and what's a positive outcome for the country in the next 4 years?
I would have been interested to know if people who supported Trump, and if any of them believed that his claims of election fraud in 2020, if this result changed any of their minds, because you have basically the same people running all the election stuff this time around, if not more Democrats as Secretary of States, as governors, and Trump won cleanly, more than he ever did in 2016. And so I think if you were someone who believed Trump about the election fraud and that it was a stolen election in 2020, I think that this election is a pretty clear example that people count the votes, election workers do good work, they work hard, our poll workers do good work, and how people vote, that's how the vote will be, and that's who's going to win. And this time Trump won, last time Biden won, and Trump won in 2016. So I hope that the people who kind of spurred on these kind of election lies about fraud can acknowledge that the system actually does a good job of counting people's votes, and that if you vote in an election, your vote's going to be counted. And that's really important for the future of our democracy, important for 2026, 2028, that we have faith in our democracy. And the best way to do that is when people make claims about the election fraud that just have no base in fact, we reject those claims. And we also, hopefully in the future, don't elect those people as leaders when they're willing to lie about elections. Something that gives me a little bit of hope. I think that overall, like, most Americans are just good people. And I think that we're all going to do our best next 4 years to make a positive impact in our communities. I think this would have been an enormous opportunity to make a lot of really positive change if Harris had won. She didn't. Trump's going to be the president in 2 months or so. But I hope that people who worked really hard for Harris, Tom included, who worked really hard to try to make the best result possible they believed in, hope they stay engaged, hope they continue to make positive change, hope they vote in the midterms, vote next time election around, but also do the everyday work to try and make your local community better and to protect people. I think it's going to be a tough next couple of years, particularly for members of the undocumented community, the LGBTQ plus community. And I am very nervous about that and hope that I'm wrong to be nervous, but I am nervous about that. And I just hope that people can do their best to make positive change in the next 4 years in whatever way they can.
Thanks, Phil. Ram, any topics? I know you joined late, but anything else you want to put out there? And then what do you think is a good outcome for the next 4 years?
So the couple of topics I was hoping would get discussed is you guys went over Musk and his involvement, and I wanted to dig deeper, see the way Musk influenced the election. He brought in some Silicon Valley tactics and venture capital tactics and lots of money into the game. And I remember when super PACs started becoming a thing, and Citizens United and all that came out. So it's a good topic for discussion about how money and other kinds of tactics influenced this particular election. As for post-election government optimization that you guys went through, there is precedent, right? One of the biggest sources of expense for the government for the foreseeable future will be not just paying employees that are currently working, but paying for them after they end their tenure, and offering voluntary retirements, offering one-time settlements, and allowing those people to join the private enterprise, private workforce will be a path forward for that. There are ways to reduce the public exchequer's burden without harming people and families. They should explore those. Like all these, what's called saber rattling. I forgot the word. Rabble rousing, saber rattling about we'll cut the Department of Education or Department of Defense is toast and all that. Like that's too hyperbolic to me. There are much simpler, easier ways to deal with these kinds of situations. What I hope will happen in the next few years is people like you who show so much energy into the process stay engaged, and elections like one event, right? It's our responsibility doesn't end with that. Where we chose who we chose, some of us have to be disappointed, others are partying, that's okay. But again, the point is, uh, whether the people we like got in or not, our issues still are the same issues.
Thanks, Ram. Yeah, on my side, what didn't we talk about? Like, we didn't have time, but maybe in a future show, we'll talk about the future of the Democratic Party. And, I think there's an opportunity to maybe look a little bit more like the 1990s Democratic Party, like more of a Clinton centrist, center-left kind of approach. I think that will win more general elections. It's harder to win in primaries with that approach, but I think that it wins you elections. So we can talk about like, will there be like a realignment within the Democratic Party? And then in terms of positive outcome for next 4 years, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but wouldn't it be amazing if Trump like turned it down a little bit and was like, okay, like, let's just get some stuff done that everybody can agree on. Let's all get along. And I'll moderate some things, but we're going to have to do stuff on the border. We're going to have to do stuff on, regulatory burden or whatever. And, and he's successful. Like, as much as I don't like him, like, I want him to be successful because I live in this country and my kids are going to have to deal with his actions. So, so I think there's a path. Like, he was a very moderate Democrat back when I was living on the East Coast. So like that still lives inside of him somewhere, I'm sure. So that's my positive hope for him, that he pivots to the center. And maybe this was like just his kind of, character he was playing to get the win. Okay, now I'm going to take some audience questions. If you are all invited to stay around, but I realize it's in the evening and everything. Okay, here's the first question from Bob. Maybe this is more for me and Phil, but actually, Jeremy, you were a never Trumper before, so maybe you can. I don't know, Ram. You're always very diplomatic about where you stand on your vote, but. Bob says, why are you a never Trumper? And does that mean any logical argument that paints him in a good light is disregarded? Okay, I'm a never Trumper because for me, a red line is character, integrity, honesty, kind of intellectual consistency. And no politician is perfect, but I score him like F on those items. So even if I'm like, yeah, he has a point on this policy or that policy, as a leader, my worldview is we can't be in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room and in the, congressional negotiations with him. So we have to trust that he will do the right thing, exercise good judgment, and make data-driven, fact-based, logical decisions. And I don't believe that he will do that. I don't believe I've seen that in him. Now, in terms of, does that mean that any logical argument that paints him in a good light is disregarded? No, I actually think that part of the reason why Trump has been successful, he was right, that we didn't do enough. When I say we, the Biden administration, I believe, did not do enough on the border. They were overcompensating to be not Trump, and then went so far in the other direction that 300,000 crossings a month, like that's just not sustainable. And you could tell that when they did do some executive actions, it did help. So on that front, like, I think Trump was right that he was pointing out an issue that needed to be addressed. But like Trump, he overplays the hand, or maybe he doesn't overplay. Maybe that's why his strategy is. And it makes it toxic. So people don't want to be associated with anything that looks like Trump. And then I think that's what happened to Biden, frankly. So I don't have a problem with Trump. I mean, I think he's right that on trade, we've been historically so in favor of more trade that we are willing to take deals that kind of give a lot of advantages to smaller economies selling into our country, but then we accept some restrictions on our ability to export into their countries. I think that was out of hubris in the 80s when we just thought like nobody would ever challenge the US. Like, I literally wrote my thesis on US-China trade and how in undergrad, how doing more trade with China would invariably make them democratic and look more like us, which in hindsight is such a delusional America, everyone's going to look like America view that was just kind of inconsistent with the reality that every country is different and they're going to do their own thing. So I think, Bob, I think Trump is right about we need to do more on the border. I think he's right that we need to be more mindful of the impact of trade deals on working class Americans. Like, I think he touches on important topics. I just find the way he does it he overplays it. He goes to 12 when maybe he should go to 8. And then as a person, I don't find him curious. And to me, I don't find him intellectually curious. I find him to be insecure to a level that blinds his judgment. So that's my answer. Phil, what's your take as a fellow non-Trump supporter? Like, do you think there's anything that you could see that's good in what Trump is doing or saying?
Yeah, I think if you're a never Trumper, if you're an all-in MAGA, I think either way you should be able to like not turn your brain off and be able to acknowledge there are things that people do that are good and some things that they do that are bad, and be able to tell the difference and then speak up when other things happen. I mean, I think in his first term, he passed a bill that was like on criminal justice. Now he didn't write it, of course, but he signed it, and that was good. And he helped get Republicans on board for that. And that was good because we shouldn't be like pursuing a really tough on crime, war on drugs kind of agenda for people that are like smoking weed, and it's just not the right thing to do. So I don't think that you should approach politics and say, because this person is not on my team, or I don't like this person for some very valid reasons, that means they can never do anything that I can acknowledge is objectively a good thing, right? But I think for me, the reason why, I'm a never Trumper and gladly voted for Harris and did a lot of work to try and help Harris win, it was because I think that it's bad when you don't concede elections. I think it's a red line. I think when you decide that you don't care how an entire country votes, and you're going to try and declare victory instead, and then try and use fake electors, break the law, try and get people to invade the Capitol. I think when you do that stuff, that's a red line. And it doesn't mean that it's impossible for someone who does those bad things that cross my red line to ever do anything that could be good. And I hope that he's a lot less bad than I think he will be in this office. But yeah, I think no matter where you're on the political spectrum, I think it's good to try and look at things objectively and not just say because you don't like Kamala Harris, that means Kamala Harris could never do anything good either. It's like try and evaluate things as they are and as they come down the road. And I think it's not wrong, though, to have red lines. I think everyone has them. And for me, it was not conceding elections.
Jeremy, you were a never Trumper. What's your take on this question? Why are people never Trumpers? And is there anything that can get a never Trumper to say something good about Donald?
Yeah, well, I think media diet has a lot to do with it. In 2016 and during that whole election cycle, I listened to NPR. Like if I was ever in the vehicle, NPR was on, and I was just really nerd out on that stuff. I also watched a lot of PBS. The online content that I consumed was all kind of biased one way. But despite that, like I still wasn't, I wouldn't call myself a Democrat back then. In 2016, I voted for Jill Stein. In 2020, I was part of the Yang campaign. That was the first time I was really motivated to get involved in the primaries. I think Yang was a phenomenal candidate. It's awful what they did. But, you know, in 2016, the Democratic Party, they rigged the primary against Bernie. In 2020, they obviously put their thumb on the scale to get Joe Biden. But then, I mean, all right, so, but I would consider myself a never Trumper in 2020 just because of his disastrous COVID response. Although, like, I did start to warm up to the guy, but he just really dropped the ball in COVID. And I think it really wasn't until the Democratic Party decided they were going to really tilt the scales for Kamala Harris in the primary this cycle that I was just like, enough is enough. And then the candidate quality in the third party this time around is pretty awful as well. Like the Green Party has just been so disappointing. Like Jill Stein again, and then there was nothing in Chase Oliver that I thought was inspiring. And then the coalition that Trump was able to put together, you know, specifically him, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk is very, very impressive. And he became the obvious choice for me in that regard.
Peter, why do you think never Trumpers are never Trumpers? I'm curious, like, what is your perspective on folks like me who really find Trump deplorable?
I don't know. You guys seem to say that you don't like what he talks, his messaging.
Okay, so your view your view is that people who don't like Trump are only anti-Trump because of his communication style? I
mean, you just said that the trade thing is something been unfair for decades, right? You just said that the immigration borders could be tougher. Yeah.
And so my point is not only how he communicates about it, but then he goes overboard. Like when you say, oh, we're going to have, my favorite word is tariffs, and I'm going to have 1,000% tariff on anything. Like that's not sensible trade policy. And then I know people say, oh, no, he's playing 4D chess and he's negotiating. He's not really going to do it. Well, we'll see if he was playing 4D chess. But if he starts implementing massive tariffs and making American consumers pay basically a sales tax, like that's not going to be good for his supporters. So, but to be clear, irrespective of what I said on this live stream, if I asked you yesterday, why do you think never Trumpers are never Trumpers? Like, why do you think they are never Trumpers?
I think some of you guys, okay, how do you, some part of your group is actually for open borders. So they are by default a never Trumper.
So, but surely you don't think everybody who's against Trump is for open borders, or do you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
You asked me, some of the people might be for open borders.
Okay.
Yeah, less libertarians are.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Can I get a quick word in?
Ron? Yeah. Why don't you weigh in here? What's your interpretation of the never Trumper?
Yeah. So one easy answer for me is that guy's social life is a disaster. It's not exemplary. You can't, like Obama. You can tell your kids, look at Obama, how he handles himself and his life, and how he raises his kids, and you see how the family is, right? He works hard. He's well educated, focuses on fitness, and talks well and all that. Contrast that with Trump. Like he's married thrice. He's always involved in some allegation, some scandal of some kind or the other. It's very hard to use him as an example of what you should aspire to be. And one of the things one would hope to see in a leader at that level is somebody that's exemplary, is a model citizen type of person, right? Trump scores so low on any of that it's very hard for anyone to rally behind him on those parameters.
Yeah, I definitely. There is some sort of, in my opinion, dissonance between. I used to be a Republican back in the 90s, and that used to be the party of. It used to be called Family Values, and it was the party where we said character matters, and now we nominated Trump as the party nominee. 3 times, but whatever.
Yeah, and like same point, right? Bill Clinton, the great orator, great politician, lots of other things. But why did he get impeached again?
Yeah,
So you can't point to him either, right? And say, so it's
Well, my
not like
point is
you have too many options at this point.
the Democratic Party, there was less hypocrisy with Clinton, because the Republican Party was a party of holier than thou. We are good. Marriage forever, no abortion, no drugs, nothing, no drinking. Nothing. Like everything's by the book. That is not how Donald Trump lives. Let's be honest. He's on his 3rd marriage. He's got, I don't know, 5 kids from 3 women, right? Or something like that. I don't know how many, but it's not.
And like that's personal life. I don't mean to pry or comment on that, but all I'm saying is, in terms of why people cannot relate to him as a role model, this stands out as one reason. Not just that he's married 3 times or whatever, but all the other allegations and scandals associated with him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could do a whole show on his personal life. Let's not do that. I don't want to get struck from social media if we talk about the details of his relations. Next question. Who should they have picked? So Eric is saying, okay, if Kamala, because I think I was making the point hey, Kamala's too tied to the Biden administration to have won. I will also acknowledge that when your nominee drops out 30 days before the convention, you don't have a lot of time to go with someone else. So the sitting VP was a practical, also logical choice to pick Kamala. So I don't blame Kamala for losing. I feel like she got dealt a shit hand, and she had to be associated with this administration, but also be loyal, and had 90 days to tell her story. That's a tough hand. And then with prices still not going up, but still high. And that is a nuance that I don't think voters cared about.
But Tom, she was the vice president. It's not like it was her hand. She played the hand. She is still our vice president, by the way. It's not
Ron, tell me a previous vice president that did anything.
That's not the point. Whether they did something or not is immaterial. She was on the team. She did not win the primary last time. She got picked to be vice president.
Hey, well, hold on, Ram. I got to correct you on this. That is not the job of the president. You know what the job of the president is to breathe and be ready for when the president dies or is incapacitated. If the president, you think Kamala was running the show in the White House?
No, I do not. That's not what I was saying.
So, why don't you make your point?
No. Like when you're saying that she got dealt a bad hand, yeah, the timing before the election, I agree, could have been much better. But she was with the administration all along. She is still the vice president. So she could have made a better case for herself.
Do you think Mike Pence takes credit for what Trump did?
That's secondary. That's not the point here.
You think Joe Biden takes credit for what Obama did?
He should actually. He was the more experienced politician in that administration. He should have been advising and guiding Obama along.
Okay.
That's probably one of the reasons he won the election later.
Okay, I understand your point of view. So, do you think that the Democrats could have picked someone else other than Kamala?
Didn't we go through this once? That's so many other candidates. They should have run a primary, let them fight it out. There's a process for that.
Yeah, people say they should have run a primary. Is do they mean everyone in all the states should have voted again, every individual voter? Because you have to coordinate that with the state governments so that they can run fair elections. And it costs millions and millions of dollars, and you can't just
Yeah.
like order
So effectively, what you're saying is the convention date determined our presidential candidate. They could have postponed the convention date. That's one event.
Well, wait.
They should
you
have
to
tried to run
ballots.
a fair election.
You have to get on ballots though. Like there's like deadlines to apply to get on certain ballots. So you can't just like say we'll have our candidates chosen in mid-September or like October and then expect to get on a bunch of ballots. So I guess I think it's a thing where like the timing was difficult because
this can happen anytime, right? Forget this election cycle. In any election cycle, if one of the candidates is unable to continue to run, they have to find a replacement.
Mm-hmm.
That's an anytime situation. There should be a protocol for how to pick a replacement candidate.
Right, but the protocol is to have the delegates vote on who should be the candidate. And they did that. And now the delegates all decided we want Kamala Harris and party unified behind her. But anyone was free to run. I think Marianne Williamson tried, but none of the delegates just supported her. And that was the issue. I think Shapiro decided not to run. Whitmer decided not to run. I understand, and I think it's a fair argument that it might have been nice if we had known what we know, now, like if we know after the debate, if we could go back in time and have Biden say, listen, I'm just not going to run for a second term. Let's let the full primary process play out. And that would have been a lot more ideal in a lot of ways. But I also think it's not really fair to say, given the way things turned out, saying you have 30 days to convention. And also, I'm not even sure it was 30 days before the convention when Biden actually dropped out. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I think it was actually less than that, even by the time Biden actually dropped out. So the idea that we're saying in the span of like 2 weeks, we need to have like a whole official primary process that is like going into actual states and having people vote when they can't even, I don't know how you coordinate that even. So I think it's one of those like points. I understand why people say it like in like an abstract of like, it would have been really good if we had like a full primary process that was like everyone voting, and that would have been great. But it just wasn't how the time allowed. And there was no way to do that, I think, to actually in a way that would have given any results at all. Like you have the delegates vote. That's why there are brokered conventions. That's what happened in, it was 1968 or something when LBJ stepped down, I think, and the convention decided it. That's how it is. And it's always ideal when people can vote. But we didn't have an ideal scenario, so we had to do the best we could. That was delegates voting. They chose Kamala overwhelmingly, and she's the nominee, and that was it. I think it's fair to say, should we have done a different, if Biden had dropped out a lot sooner, could there have been different processes? Maybe.
My question is, what would have happened if he had dropped off later, like say in October or end of September or something?
And his running mate would be the.
I don't know. I mean, that would come down to what different state laws allow for what you can get off the ballot. I mean, it's a really, I think it's not an easy thing to just like hop on. RFK can probably attest to this, that it's not just easy to hop on and off a ballot on a lot of these states. Like he had enormous trouble getting on some ballots and then had enormous trouble getting off of ballots in certain states after he endorsed Trump. Like this isn't a simple thing of getting on the ballot, is my point. I think, and I think sometimes people who wanted a more like robust primary process don't take that into account, that you could end up with a situation where, oh yeah, we got the nominee of our dreams and everyone had their say, every voter across America. Oh shoot, it's November 1st and we're not on the ballot anywhere. This is going to be a landslide even more than it was tonight. So it's last night. So I just think that's something important to take into account, and why, I think it would have been nice to have a longer primary, but that's not what we had.
Jeremy, do you think the Dems could have picked someone else? Would it have changed anything?
Yeah, easily. Joe Biden should have dropped out way sooner than what he did to allow a free and fair primary. I mean, you go ask Marianne, go ask RFK, go ask Dean Phillips. Was that primary free and fair? Not a single one of them is going to say yes. There's a ton of people that could have beat Trump this cycle, whether it be, just RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders could still beat Donald Trump. Andrew Yang could have, if things had gone different. Tim Ryan, I think, could have beat him. They got a long bench. They could have gone toe to toe. As far as how Kamala got nominated at the DNC, I think they should have done something like the Libertarians do, of where the candidates all show up, and then there is like a spirited election between the delegates, and there's multiple rounds of voting, and at the end, somebody is selected or nobody is selected. So the ability to do something like that is possible because it exists, and I think they should have done something like that. Granted, I'm not up to speed on the esoteric bylaws of the DNC, but I think, man, they just really screwed up the cycle.
Yeah, okay. My sense is that I am of the mind that this cake was baked with the inflation and border record. And the people that voted for Trump yesterday, I don't think they would have been like, oh, well, Shapiro makes such a great case. I think they would have been like, these Dems suck. We want to change it up. So I actually don't think picking someone other than Kamala would have changed much. I mean, they might have narrowed the loss, but I think Trump still would have won. That's my own opinion. I mean, if you had asked me, obviously, in January, I would have said, oh, people hate Trump. We just need someone that's not, 80 years old. But I actually now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, with such a strong Trump showing, people were really pissed. And anybody with that blue jersey, no matter how attractive a candidate they were, I think they would have been, kind of screwed. But that's just my opinion. All right. Next question. We lost Peter. I think his yacht battery recharging system is having issues. But what do we think on this panel about the legal kind of actions and investigations? I mean, I know Trump promised that, but a lot of people are saying, well, he was just kind of bloviating. He's not really going to do that. And same with the tariffs, that this is just a negotiation. There's not really going to be tariffs. Like, we're going to have a great deal with China somehow. Maybe we'll start with Phil, and then we'll go Jeremy and Ron. Phil, any thoughts on lawfare and tariffs?
I think he'll probably try and do the tariffs. I feel like it was his one real economic policy that he ever talked about. So it'd be kind of weird. I guess he'd be on like the tax cuts. And so I think he's going to try the tax cuts and he's going to try the tariffs. What that actual level actually comes out to in the tariffs, I mean, I think he threw around like 400 different numbers between like 10% and 1,000%, I think was the range. So a lot of variation in there on what he's going to do for sure. But I would suspect that like he'll try and do that. And I mean, like, I think he seems to like tariffs a lot, so I'd be surprised if he didn't. On lawfare, I think I'm hopefully there will be enough people to put him in check and not have him go after people like that. I have, a decent amount of faith in like courts in general to, stand up to that, and juries in general. I think we have like a good system of justice overall. And so, hopefully that stuff doesn't happen. I don't think Trump would be against it, but I hope there are enough good people in a variety of positions who will stand up to that.
Jeremy, predictions on lawfare and tariffs.
Tariffs are definitely going to happen, but to the extent, I mean, I think it's anybody's guess, man. I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be extreme blankets, but yeah, we'll definitely see some kind of expansion. That's like 200% tariffs on on John Deere tractors coming from Mexico. Probably not, but just saying, I wouldn't really be against that either. Lawfare stuff, I know we might see a little bit, but I kind of doubt it.
Ron, what do you think?
If it does happen, you'll be against that, right?
Was that lawfare?
Yeah.
Generally, I think. I mean, that's
good.
Yeah,
that's good.
Ron?
Yeah, I don't think any legal shenanigans will happen. Lock her up was such a huge war cry in 2016. They didn't do anything. These kinds of things, I assume, are mostly just to rally the troops and not to actually follow through. Tariffs, on the other hand, I believe there is an economic argument to be made to reconsider the tariff schedules we have. So something might happen on that. We might end up paying more for some stuff. That depends on how quickly, like which products will get domestically manufactured to substitute imports, and like who will benefit from that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less optimistic than the panel. I do think he will go after people that he feels in his mind he was wronged by. I remember when I think they said during his administration that Comey, I think randomly got audited, but it was like the chance of like, there's a bunch of people that got audited by the IRS when Trump was in office that they said was like more likely to be hit by lightning kind of thing. So I don't know. I think this is where the character thing matters. And I think that Trump is a small person who feels like he always has to get even. And, you know, I feel bad for him. Like, I feel bad that his father was so like harmful to his self-image that he feels like he always has to show everybody how tough he is. It's kind of sad as a grown man to go through life like that. So I think he will go after people. And then on tariffs, I think he will feel like he has to. And his advisors will say like, well, this will result in higher prices, because to Ram's point, you can't just flip on domestic production overnight. You know, if you've been importing stuff for a long time, you can be like, oh yeah, that we're going to make toys here because we don't want to import toys from China anymore. Like that doesn't happen overnight. And then when it does happen domestically, like you have to pay people at a higher rate than you would that the Chinese factories are paying people. So that can't be lowering the prices. So I'm worried that he will do the tariffs because he, in his gut, he feels like it's the right call. And it will raise prices on American consumers. And I think there will be retaliatory tariffs on American exports, which then would probably not be great for American companies that sell overseas. So I think he's going to do it. And hopefully you guys are right and I'm wrong, because I don't think it's good. But here's the next question. Is our government institution that bad that most Americans voted for someone to destroy it? Why don't we start with you, Jeremy, and then Ram and Phil, just mixing up the order.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that, I'm not a completely burn it all down type of guy. There's a lot of people out there that I should say a lot, but there are some people that support the breakup of the United States. I'm not persuaded by that argument. However, I think a lot of our government is completely unchecked and needs to be reined in. I think most of our institutions have failed us and do more harm than good. And a massive reformation is required for us to be, I don't know, to get back more in line of what I think this country is supposed to be about.
All right. So you think it's reasonable that Americans are like, hey, this thing needs to be shaken up big time.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. Ram, what do you think?
So every election is an opportunity to vote for change, right? So like that's what happens every election. There will always be some people who abhor what's present. They want to change everything from scratch. Those people generally tend to set direction, like creaky wheel gets the grease situation. I think there's a lot of chance for improvement in the government. A lot of it works well too. There's always chance for improvement.
What do you think, Phil?
I mean, I think this country is pretty awesome. We have the best economy in the world. We have the best military in the world. We have a free press. We have a justice system that is also the envy of the world. Justice system that is so methodical and fair Trump was able to do a coup and then took 4 years to ever charge him for anything of that. He was able to win the presidency in that time. Like, our institutions are strong and they're good and they do a lot of good work that is really important. Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean there isn't a lot to improve to make it more accountable, more transparent, more able to deliver for people. But I really would encourage people that like the government institutions are made up of a lot of people who work really hard to try and help people and aren't in it for the money, because frankly, public workers don't make as much as a lot of people in the private sector. And they're in it to try and, because they believe in the mission. People at the EPA are there because they want to help people get clean water, clean air, and some people fight climate change as well. Like people, at HUD are trying to help people get more housing. Like our government institutions are around to try and help our country be as great as possible. And I think it's sad that there's been so much villainization of our institutions that people now have absolutely no trust in a lot of them. And, some people will vote to try and just destroy them. And I think that's too bad. And I hope that our institutions are strong enough to put in check the worst impulses of Trump. And I think that, I wish people would be a little more, give a little more credit to the fact that like our government institutions are what has made us an incredible country in part, and are responsible for a lot of the, clean water we have, the medicine we get, like a lot of the stuff that really makes life really good is probably because of government institutions.
Yeah, I come down maybe on the middle on this one, that I think, to Phil's point, there are definitely major parts of the government that are the envy of other countries. I also think that large organizations are inherently, have issues with efficiency. And I also think that our government workers are underpaid. And so we're not able to attract and retain, the talent that we deserve. The people that are there are either there because they are civic minded and they're kind of sacrificing, or, they're there for other reasons. But I think we could get better people if we paid our government workers more, but then also held them more accountable for results, like any other organization. So, part of me is like, well, maybe if Musk doesn't slash and burn, but like make some improvements to incentives, things could be good for us. But I don't know. I mean, maybe this is my theme. I just hope Trump doesn't overplay his hand.
I think the worry is too that like if you're building your institutions on loyalty rather than on competence, that's always a bad sign.
Yeah. That is the loyalty thing. Yeah.
That would be a contradiction, right? Like Musk is purportedly laser focused on competence and efficiency, and Trump keeps saying, or we keep hearing that Trump will fill cabinet with loyalists, and so
Elon Musk is completely loyal to Trump.
Yeah, I doubt that.
All right. Well, there is I think the way we know Musk runs his organizations, he's very metrics driven. I don't think Trump is metrics driven. So that'll be interesting to see what that dynamic is. Like maybe Musk modifies his approach because he has so much to gain by having a good relationship with Trump. I mean, it could literally not put it on the map because they're already successful companies, but it could take SpaceX to the next level. It could take Starlink to the next level for Starlink shareholders. It could take Twitter to the next level. It could take Tesla to the next level. Like he's already the richest man, but he could be like 10 times richer if he has favorable kind of government contracts. So I don't know. It will be interesting to see what Elon does. All right. Another question. What are people's thoughts on Forward Party RCV? Let me take that one first because that's one near and dear to my heart. Forward Party, like I'm all about more competition. I will say that I've not seen as much from the Forward Party as I had hoped to see by now. I mean, it's been 4 years, right? So I think if the Forward Party could do it all over again, I think they should have focused on being a regional party, focusing on local elections, and then working their way up versus trying to immediately be a credible national third party. But I get why, like sometimes you swing for the fences, but I don't think they made it this time. The other thing is on RCV, I'm actually going to be shifting my volunteer efforts, obviously from the Harris campaign, to I'll probably be spending more time on the Cal RCV initiative, the California Ranked Choice Voting Initiative, to bring RCV to, we're not trying to change like Congress. We're trying to do it at the local city council level, work our way up. It's not the most glamorous work, but that's how sometimes you got to get change. It's through the grinding it out. So I'm in favor of RCV. I'm in favor of open primaries, final five kind of stuff. I might take a little break from national politics and just let's see what Trump does in the next couple of years. And then, I'm guessing midterms will be pretty exciting. What are your thoughts, Phil, on, do you have any thoughts? I don't think you and I have talked in the past about third parties and RCV. I don't know what your views are on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think RCV is really good. I think in general, I think it makes our elections better because it forces people to not do the burn down the other side kind of strategy. If you call, the other side voters like garbage or scum, it's not a great way to get them to rank you second on the RCV. So I think it promotes in general, people to campaign like they want to represent the whole country. And that's, I think, just good in general for no matter who wins. You see in Alaska, I don't know how many people were following the special elections with Peltola and Sarah Palin, and you saw a huge different election basically of people being I really agree with that point, and I think she's a really good person who did that for the right reasons and all. I think in a really toxic environment that we're in, where there's a lot of really mean stuff said all around, I think that would be nice as a system that encouraged people to try and find the good in all sides. I was just thinking in general, it's a good way to make third parties more able to get in the conversation. I think that's not a bad thing at all. And I think it lets people feel more represented. And I think there's a lot of people who want to vote for both parties because they feel like they have to and they should, because it's a two-party system. I think that's the correct choice because it is a two-party system for now. But I think having ranked choice voting is a good thing. And I hope that more states adopt that. I think there were some ballot initiatives for that this election. I'm not sure how well they did. I don't think they did amazing, unfortunately. But I think it's a great thing that for people who care a lot about third parties to continue to work for, because I don't think the Hail Mary presidential play in a two-party system is, with no ranked choice voting, is the right way to go. But I think a system with ranked choice voting is a lot better for, I think, everyone.
Jeremy, as OG Yang Gang, what's your take on Forward Party and RCV?
Forward Party has been a massive disappointment. When Forward first launched, they had the 13 pillars, one of which was UBI. When they merged with Sam and Ram, they threw all that away and then just became essentially the Democratic Party. They incorporated all these people from the Bush administration to let them run the show. It's been a complete disaster and utter failure. And it breaks my heart. They really had an opportunity, I think, to make something worthwhile, and they just shat the bed. I think it's just over. Unfortunately, it truly breaks my heart to say that. For RCV, yeah, RCV is freaking awesome. RCV was on the ballot here in Missouri, but they were so freaking crooked in the way that they tied it together. All right, so the way it was put in the ballot was it was an amendment to the Constitution that only legal citizens could vote, and that there will never ever be any ranking of candidates on ballots.
Oh.
And so it was, that really pissed me off too. So yeah, that failed. So it was a yes vote killed RCV, and it passed with 68%. However, we had abortion rights on our ballots. That passed with 52%. There was also a minimum wage increase on the ballot. That passed with 58%. And guess what percentage did Trump win by? 58%. So pretty interesting election results there. But yeah. That's my thoughts on those.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the results. I think I'm still processing the presidential results, but my understanding is that RCV had hit some headwinds last night as well. What I heard is that the Alaska outcome kind of motivated a lot of the traditional party interests to be very anti-RCV. I mean, if you are in power in the current system, like RCV tends to give a little bit of oxygen to a non-traditional or emerging candidates. And, you know, if you're part of the, you know, if you have the largest market, if you're Coke or Pepsi, like you don't really want a lot of shelf space for other people. But we'll see. Like nothing comes easy. And the way that, Jeremy, that initiative was worded, like, do you only support legal citizens to vote? and then
Right, yeah.
It's like, well, that's pretty much going to give you the answer. Yeah.
Right. And it's a fucking constitutional amendment, so getting that undone is going to be a disaster. So,
yeah.
Which also too, like, I wonder if that's going to have implications for. So they changed the Republican primary to a caucus, and a caucus is a type of ranked choice voting. At least I see it that way. So I think that might have some implications for that.
Ram, you're an analytical person. What's your view on ranked choice voting?
Oh yeah, I support ranked choice voting. We've done this before too, right? Like and I want a multi-party system. Like this whole phrase of bipartisan something, it just doesn't reflect the best interests of the people at all. We should have a multi-party system, and we should have ranked choice voting. That's what I propose.
Well, that sounds like there's a lot. MAGA Peter isn't here. I think when I mentioned it to him, he looks at me suspiciously, like it's some effort to undermine Trump. but we'll have him on.
Yeah, like the sooner we get out of this cult of personality syndrome, the better it is for everybody, right? This is not about Trump or Harris, right? It's about us, our needs. We are the people. We are giving them a job. We should make sure they do it well.
Phil.
I would just say real quick, I think one thing that has to be clear though about ranked choice voting, it will take longer to tabulate votes. I think people need to be okay with that down the road of saying, okay, if it's election day takes a little bit longer to count all the votes, that's okay. And we're going to have enough trust in the system that that's okay. We're not going to call fraud when like one candidate who was in third place suddenly drops to fourth or anything like that. Like, so I do think ranked choice voting is really good, but I also think we have to be upfront and say, if you are someone who's very upset about election day taking a couple days to count, like ranked choice voting probably isn't for you. But I also think it's a good thing overall that we should push for and just acknowledge that it's okay if it takes a little extra time to get the full complete result, and that's okay.
Yeah, it also has this wrinkle of you do have to add a module to the vote counting machines, and any discussion of any software updates to any devices, people get really, kind of concerned about it. But that's a headwind. Okay, so Peter's not here, but Lou asked about, well, do we think Trump will actually reduce the federal debt? I'm curious, what do we think about this one? Maybe we start with Ram. We'll go Ram, Ram, Phil, Jeremy. Ram, go.
Yeah, someone already shared an opinion, right? Like Trump spent a lot in his first term. He might continue the trend in his second term too. This is his last term also, so he might go for the fences on this one. Very hard to tell. I hope the national debt comes down. It's at what, 36 trillion or 37 trillion. It's like that's an insanely huge number. It has to come down. So with that, I will sign off right now. I need to go take care of something.
Thanks for joining us, Ram.
Oh yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. This was a good panel.
I know we disagreed on the potency of the VP, but we'll have to continue that conversation in the future. It's an interesting one.
Definitely.
Good talking to you.
Bye, Phil. Bye, Jeremy.
All right, Phil. Do you think Trump will reduce the debt? He has promised that he will eliminate the debt in the past.
Well, if he promised that, I mean, how can he not follow through on that? I mean, when's the last time he's lied, But I think, like I said, I think there are like two big possibilities. I like, listen, no one is going to have to vote for me ever again. I mean, I can just do whatever I want. I can cut all these programs. Like in his budgets, when he was president, a lot of them were proposing cuts to Social Security, Medicare, like things that were very big item spending. So it's possibly goes down that route. I think probably the most likely thing is he says, listen, I like to spend money, and I did a lot of it my first term. People reelected me now. I want to keep doing that. So huge tax cuts across the board that are not really fiscally sound, paired with some minor spending cuts that don't really make much of a difference, but are kind of virtue signals. That would probably be my prediction is the most likely thing. But it's also possibly just kind of goes kind of scorched earth and just like cuts the budget like crazy in a way that I think wouldn't actually be like thoughtful, just kind of like slash and burn. So I hope I'm wrong about both those things. And instead he just kind of tries to lower the debt and deficit with reasonable spending, reasonable spending cuts combined with some, moderate tax increases on certain people with tax cuts for others. Like there's ways to be reasonable about trying to lower the debt. And I suspect he will not go that route, unfortunately.
What do you think, Jeremy? You think the debt will be less or more by the time his term is over?
I really don't know. Is it possible? Absolutely. I think it's possible. Is it likely? In the words of Mitch McConnell, no president became less popular by spending more money. So I don't know. We'll see, dude. I think by the end of his 4 years, it's possible, but I wouldn't put money on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'd put no money on him reducing the debt, because you would have to run a budget surplus or neutral budget, which I don't think we've done that since Clinton. So everything that he's promised would be deficit increasing. Like you can't cut taxes that much and not have more of a deficit unless you slash the defense budget and entitlements, which he says he won't touch. So I don't see how that works. I think I looked it up.
Yeah,
Department of Education is like 3% of the budget, even if you eliminate the whole thing.
Yeah, I think we'll see military spending increase. We always see military spending increase. I don't think there's been a single year of my lifetime where it's gone the other direction. I don't know. Maybe Trump's the guy that bucked the trend, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think voters really care, unfortunately.
Oh God, yeah. Well, that's. I think we've become numb to the debt. It's just like this thing. But okay, so then I think I'm gonna wrap. Oh, we just have one last question for for Phil. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't. That's really nice though you say. I really love coming on here with Tom, and it's good talking with Jeremy. And but I don't have a YouTube channel. That's very nice though to say. But I'm sure anytime Tom wants me back, I love this channel, so I'm sure I'll come back.
Yeah, you're becoming a regular guest, and I think people will appreciate hearing your perspective, even though some may not agree with it. They like that you're making a strong case for your point of view. Well, this has been fantastic, Jeremy and Phil, and it was fun having MAGA Peter on, and Ram's always open to stirring things up. I still have a bee in my bonnet about holding Kamala accountable. Like, oh, well, she was VP. Like, no VP ever has that much power. Like, I don't understand why we think that the VP is this. Like, do we think JD Vance is going to be running the White House? He's not going to be running shit. Elon is probably going to have more influence than JD.
Yeah. Believe me, Tom, I hated her for a completely different set of reasons.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming on. I'll see you guys in the future. We should assess. I'm sure Trump is going to give us stuff to talk about in the next couple of years. So the Nerds for Humanity channel will continue producing.
All right. And thank you very much, Tom.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, I love the show, dude. And it's been great talking with you.
Bye, nerds.
Nice talking to you guys. Bye.
See ya. All right. I'm going to give you my closing thoughts. Should we have some parting music? Yes. Okay, I'm going to give you my closing thoughts. You know what I'm going to do now, right? I'm going to thank the people that keep this freaking channel running. Because I've decided to take a little bit of a break from Twitter. But I think I'm going to keep the YouTube channel going. partly because I know that channel members really value this content, and they kind of are supporting the continuation of it, and that's a good signal to me to keep it running, even though things are a little bit kind of down for me right now, given the outcome of last night. All right, so let's start with our biggest supporter, which is Soldier One. Don't even have to look him up. I know it by heart now. So Soldier One, let's share him on the screen. By the way, if any channel members are ever in the San Francisco Peninsula, like around the South Bay, find a way to contact me. You can email me, Tom at nerdswithmanny.com. I was gonna say you can at me on Twitter, but I'm gonna be taking a break from Twitter. But maybe just write a comment in one of my recent videos saying, hey, I'll be in the Bay Area, and then I'll figure out a way to connect. Maybe we can go get a burrito or some ramen or something. If you're a channel member, definitely want to meet you and say hello. Okay, so Soldier One is our highest ranking channel member. If you want to become a member and support this content, just click the join button on YouTube. Let's see, total time. So the next level is our Nerd Congress, Kristen, Bike, and Zig PC. So thank you to you all. Then the Nerd City Council, right under there. We got Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Mr. History, Mona Yang, Dean, Jalessa, J. Parent, Dana, Jason, Vaughn, Daniel, Mickey, Unkiyu, Jackson, and Jeremy. Was that the same Jeremy? That might have been the same Jeremy we just had on the show. I think it is. So thank you, Jeremy. And then at the Registered Nerd, which is only $1.99 a month, you got Brandon. Ooh, well, I'll read it out loud since it's such a momentous stream. Brandon, Doris, Ben, Shoni, Dr. William, Mai, Brittany, Lori, Hope, T, David, Nicholas, Mike, Yoda, Lantern, Cindy, Sue, Earl, Tim, Sue, Lou, Joseph. All right. Now, let's go with my closing thoughts. By the way, if you can't become a channel member because of this crazy inflation, the next best thing you can do is like and share. There's 200 of you already in the live stream. We should be able to get like 100 likes. 3 closing thoughts. Number 1 is, oh my God, I can't believe Trump won. Like, I just thought his behavior, his Jan 6 shenanigans, his, withholding private documents in his mansion. Like, come on, man. He's 78. Clearly, the people will choose someone else. Clearly, they did not. They were pissed. And Biden will have to take most of the responsibility, not Kamala, in my opinion. I think this is on Biden. He should not have run for re-election. He should have had a primary along the way. But even then, not clear to me, like, who would have won. Definitely no one associated with the administration. So no Buttigieg, no Harris, maybe a Shapiro, and he would have to be willing to throw Biden under the bus in a way that still got the Democrats to turn out. Could he have done it? Maybe. Would have been hard, though. So I don't know. It might have been one of those things like when Mitt Romney had to run against Obama. It's just like nothing you can do. Like you're running into headwinds. Second takeaway is, let's see how Trump does. I mean, he has the White House, the House, the Supreme Court. They're all kind of tilted in his favor. I don't think he's a great leader, but I would love to be wrong on this one. And let's hold them accountable. If more people are working, if their income is higher and the costs are lower and there's peace in the world, and he balances the budget, like, amazing. I mean, he's promised all these things, so let's hope he can deliver. And then the third takeaway is, like, I think there's a need for a retooling of the Democratic Party. It's swung a little far to the left around 2021 and 22. And Biden allowed it to happen or agreed with it, and it kind of screwed us in the general. So if we can get to more of a center-left Democratic Party, I think that would be great. In the long run, I think we could have more parties that compete with each other. That would be great. And I'm going to be focusing my efforts on what I can do in terms of volunteering my time on local reform here in California. And midterms now, I'm sure it'll be exciting. This channel will continue to cover whatever is timely and notable in policy and politics, given who's going to be president. There'll be no shortage of timely and notable things to discuss. Hopefully, it's going to be like, wow, look at what a great job Trump is doing. Or it could be like, what the hell is this guy doing? So we'll see. But let me know in the comments what you think Trump is going to do in his next 100 days. Like, do you think he's going to be able to do good things? I hope he's going to go too extreme, or like Dan and Miller folks are going to get too extreme and run upshot on the immigration stuff. And then I worry that he's going to get too proud and play too much poker on the tariff stuff. Retaliatory tariffs reduce our exports and increase the cost of the things that we import. And I worry that the people that need the help the most are going to get harmed the most. And then, the rest of us are going to be, we'll be fine. But it's really the people that are struggling with that. Now, Trump does a great job on the border, secures it in a humane way. He does immigration reform, does things to negotiate trade deals that doesn't our workers and our companies. Like, my God, I'd be the first to say, wow, I got it totally wrong. This guy will go down as one of the greatest presidents. But he's got to deliver. He's got power now, so let's see it. All right, with that, I'm going to say bye, nerds, and thanks again to our channel members. And if you want to get a written summary of these long live streams, subscribe to the and you're going to get a written summary that you can read in 3 minutes, and it'll give you points, quotes, and everything, so you can catch up on future live streams. All right.